Bonjour à tous. J'ai étudié le français à école pour 5 ans, mais malheureusement, it's a long time ago in my case. So if it's okay, I switch to English. That was pretty much all the French I still remember. But thank you for having me, and I have the distinct pleasure to hopefully inspire you for the rest of the day with the sessions coming, that we're living in this kind of like exponential phase and that we see things happening that seemed like science fiction before. So what you already see playing in the background, and for me this is always like a great reference point where we are coming from and where we might heading. And in the preparation for this, I was really blown away by this, because this was actually drawn in Paris in the late 1800s, so around the year 1900. And as you can imagine, and by just looking at that, that was the year 1900, thinking about how Paris could look like in the year 2000. Actually, in total, and some of them are hilarious, like, how can you come up with that? But amazing to think like, well, there will be in the future a time when we can, with the help of technology, just compress knowledge and give it to students. So in total, I found 78 of these pictures have been done, illustrations. But what was so, for me, so mind-blowing is because these pictures clearly have been drawn when the technology was nowhere close to that it's actually there. But what it actually proved is that we as humans, we think about, well, this is what we would like to see. This is what we would love the future to be heading to. And so if you now fast forward, if you think about the genius of that, because this was drawn maybe like 20 years after commercial phones were introduced to France, and according to AI, in that year there were only a few 100,000 telephones available in France, but we already thought about, wouldn't it be cool if that technology could evolve into something where I see the other person, and then a few years later someone picked it up, like, wouldn't it be amazing to be on the go? We're really good in combining technology. So, for instance, in a time that's from 1934, when commercial television sets have just been not released yet, they were something for the laboratory. But we knew the newspaper, and so thinking about, wouldn't it be amazing to have televised newspaper? And the article actually claimed, and that's 1934, it's not a question if, it's rather a question when we will have this kind of technology. But of course, it's 2026, and you know, with the exponential progress and with engineering, the interesting bit is that what seemed to be completely unrealistic has become a reality. 1945, Vannevar Bush thinking about like thinking machines. Wouldn't it be amazing to have like a camera mounted to our head and giving us an additional intelligent layer? He already in 1945 foreseen maybe we can project something in our visionary field, and that's today's reality. So this is a client I know inside out since 10 years, Linde, like using augmented reality assisted repairs on shop floors. So if something breaks down, that the intelligence layer in the form of your visual object recognition and a human call center and AI helps you to fix it. This is from the 50s, like thinking, wouldn't it be amazing to have robotics help us in the warehouses? And of course, you have all seen those videos. We are in this present day. But from my perspective, what's so amazing of these days is, you know, if you considered robotics to be something that were of no additional value, which were like super expensive, which were like, why would I ever use robotics? We see currently this tremendous shift from hydraulics to electromotors. And this kind of like mechanical shift is like matched, not only that we have this kind of like new ranges in motions and we can use them for different use cases, but this development is now matched with the intelligence layer. So these machines have something like ChatGPT built in. There is a 5G upstream. And all of a sudden, what we can do is, instead of coding every single action item, we can show stuff. And we can say, watch me, observe me, do the same thing as I did. And these training cycles come down to a few hours. And of course, as we all know, machines are intelligent to distribute their knowledge. So once we trained one, basically it can train the next generation. They can even divide tasks. They can think about how to collaborate. And for me, about these things, it's never about replacing humans. It's about where can we find use cases in support. Like, for instance, security inspection when there is an alert. I mean, first, please send in the robots before we send in a human. Or I was a civil servant myself, and I lifted many, many people out of hospital beds. This is not something that you like to do as a human, so, get the support. Another example, it's just too good to be true. Like, I can just imagine in the 50s how bizarre that must have sounded, that we work together with people, that we hire people that we never seen in real life. And of course, this has become a reality to all of us. But now we have the Gen AI revolution. We can formalize knowledge. We can interview people and gain insights, and we can tag it. But we also can do, for instance, different onboarding. And I'm saying different, not better. For me, for instance, it's a question like whether we can have more languages in upskilling, in training, in onboarding. So this is a beauty and cosmetic company in Germany, and she's the marketing director, and she's currently in parental leave. And before she left, she wanted to avatarize herself. So this has been done with Hagen. And if we would look carefully, I mean, who would think that this is AI? But it's fully promptable, and with her permission, she is still doing all the onboarding for the new marketing employees. And the good thing is, all of a sudden, it could be done in all the languages spoken, like mother tongues, like she'd done training now in over 40 languages. But it's not stopping here with this kind of like future of work, because of course we are getting the people now the tools that they can do amazing things about their productivity. And as a last example, because I remember that so vividly when I was a teenager in the south of Germany, when I read Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy, and I remember when I wrote this passage about like the Babelfish. And for me, with my mother language of German, it was like reading it as a teenager, like, wouldn't it be amazing to put something in my ear and then this weird creature translates any written languages or spoken language into my native tongue. And of course, as we all know, technology is there and can exactly do that. We have real-time translation of calls. But again, it doesn't stop there. The notion from the book, like to have this physical guide that helps me with all the information, for me, for instance, that has become perplexity. And just last night when I arrived in Paris, it was again these kind of like Gen AI moments when I stand in front of a super impressive French building and I just hold up my phone. What is that I'm looking at? How do I get in? What's inside? Can I buy a ticket? And so on and so forth. So I wanted to start with that because hopefully we're all on the same page here. What used to be science fiction, maybe just a few years ago, has become a science fact. But as we are all experiencing it, this is not like a linear progress. This is, of course, like something that starts very slowly, and you're all perfectly aware of the metaphor with the chessboard. This is how technology behaves. It starts super slow, like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. But once a technology picks up the other, once there is a catalyst, like one technology is a catalyst to the next technology, once like these developments are accelerating each other, then all of a sudden we notice that there is some progress we haven't foreseen. And this is for me always like super exciting to see, because being in the industry for quite some long time, you often have this kind of like feeling, I don't know where this is heading to, but then something happens and it's there. And I think the perfect representation why this is continuing to accelerate is because of the simple fact stuff in technology usually becomes cheaper, it becomes more reliable, it becomes smaller in production. Human hair has 60,000 nanometer. We are building chips in 3 nanometer. Like if you imagine that we can build things that are a fraction of a human hair, we can connect these things with each other. We can basically not only connect us to the machines with other machines, but we also can connect learning. And this is always quite exciting for me, because if I'm part of a system like that, and if I as a human do an error, it's individual learning, it's individual experience. But if a machine does an error, of course it can distribute the knowledge. And so I'm quite excited about these futures where machines and human mankind can live hopefully close by. Of course, out of these connections we have tons of data. In the industry, data coming from, for instance, like industrial grade cameras, or like if you take an example like a 5G data logger, and all of these technologies used to be expensive and they became cheaper. And now once we have these cheaper technologies, we can integrate them more easily, we can see how the sensors connect with each other in industrial IoT, etc. And all of a sudden, we're witnessing this kind of like step from this kind of like Industry 4.0 world that we're all accustomed to Industry 5.0, where it's more about these interconnections with this intelligence layer and robotics, etc. And for me, if I just think about that for a minute, what we will see around digital twins, like combining these sensor data, combining them with real-time insights, combining them with what we can do in robotics, it's quite exciting. Am I too fast, actually? Okay, good. Because these are, for instance, like highly versatile human representations, like digital twins of humans. And if we have them integrated in our digital twins, something magically happens, because based on that, and that is, by the way, a factory that's currently been built for BMW. It will be launched this year in Poland, but the digital twin actually is operational since 2 years. And so by gaining insights from these digital twins, we can optimize the construction. So with these human digital twins, we not only can like scale the efficiency, more importantly, we can see whether there are security risks with these autonomous vehicles. We can see whether we can optimize the ergonomics, like does a human person need to shift yourself like for 1,000 times? Can we reduce that to maybe 300 times in a smaller angle? Do we need to go into our knees to reach something or whatever? So I'm really fascinated by these developments, because it helps us to do things better before we actually physically build that. And all of these developments are, of course, fueled by the exponential progress in machine learning, deep learning, you name it. But the point is, it came out from the labs and it's in production, as we already know, like AI in optimization of supply chain management, or again, our client Linde optimizing their factory for energy efficiency. Like they're really, really saving a lot of energy there with a huge economically good impact. To have this predictive maintenance as something that's not only a nice use case, but it's there, it's available. If I think about quality controls, what I can do if I have the machine data from a camera, and now I can process that. In pharmaceutical, if you consider that actually DeepFold from Google actually won a Nobel Prize for chemistry. And all the pharmaceutical companies that I know of are super excited about this development, because they keep telling me these developments are real and they will change how we can go into the lab and look for new formulas, not in 10 years from now, but right now in the lab. So we will see the result of that like in the short notice. Another thing that I'm super excited about is material science, because once again, if we have data, if we have AI, we can look for these new stable material combination. And based on what I'm aware of, there are so many substances now in lab tests where with the help of AI and with the help of robotics, we're looking for stable materials that could revolutionize battery technology or solar panels, etc. But of course, as you're all perfectly aware, this is of course the outer layer with like machine learning, deep learning. The big topic for today also here is what's happening in generative AI, and especially what's been happening in the last 3 years. And from my perspective, why I always love to show that old slide is because it stopped 8 years ago. And if we think about this exponential progress, what happened in the last 8 years since that slide stopped to track is far more exceeding to the developments that have been before. And my argument for this afternoon is what will happen in the next 8 months will outperform what happened in the 8 years before. I mean, 8 years ago, this was a problem for machine learning. You hopefully all see the difference. You know, for you as humans, it's very easy to spot the dog, and for machine learning 8 years ago, it was almost an impossible task. It's similar pixel information, similar colors, so you had to go through the training material. You are a dog, you are a dog, you are certainly not a dog, but this of course changed dramatically, and as you are all perfectly aware, it now really is this combination that's happening right now, like the training data, the computing power, the open source community. All of a sudden, everything comes beautifully together, and someone like me can prompt something like that. And this is the worst version of a picture quality you will ever see. And this was one prompt without any, without any follow-up. And if I think about that we can create something and we can throw it in another program and we can animate it, it really reminds me on my study days where I always was limited by my lack of technical ability. Like I remember when I watched Toy Story and I went out of the cinema and I wanted to become a 3D artist. And I had access to amazing computers at the university and amazing software. But the technical ability to animate, I mean, after months of trying, I still was nowhere close that I would see something creatively interesting. And that changed. I mean, now we have a very steep learning curve with these tools. And like I've already said, it just keeps on improving. So if there would have been DXD a year ago, this would be the quality text to video. The prompt is gymnastics, and it looks rather like a horror movie. And you know, the experts in the room would have they would have made a point to me like, Max, look, this is super complex stuff. We're talking about vector animation. We're talking about not only animating 24 frames per second, we're talking about physics, statistics, stochastic, but done in a 3-dimensional way. Every frame needs to understand what's happened before. Yeah, I understand. It's complicated. It's complicated. But then remember the chessboard, remember this phase when things are coming together. 1 + 1 sometimes equals more than 2, and all of a sudden I'm seeing that and I'm like, oh, now the physics somehow seem to work. Somehow something has happened. Somehow we gave the tools now to creatives, and all of a sudden, like I said, the learning curve is so steep that they can create something in a pretty good quality, I have to say. But also, people are now starting to fix movies like, you know, if you're offended by the end of Titanic, as I am, because like a real fact, there has been a PhD about that, he could have fitted the door. You know, the door was big enough. I never got that. Why doesn't he climb up the door? But if you're offended by that, you know, you create your own ending of the movie. So I wanted to sensitize ourselves. It's just the worst version today. And if in a brainstorming, if in a meeting someone says, I don't know if it works, then our answer always should be, well, maybe not yet. This is something very important for this afternoon. If we consider technology, every single technology that I'm aware of goes through the Gartner hype cycle. So at the beginning, it's like completely overhype. I mean, there are 50,000 AI tools now, and you know, there are crazy valuations out there. Every single day I see on my LinkedIn feed someone writing, you don't need Excel skills anymore. Forget about PowerPoint. You know, AI just takes care of that. CES introduced a salt dispenser with AI built in. I mean, I never thought about that I would need AI to do a salt dispenser. But the point is, like I've said, it's this kind of like tendency as humans that we overpromise, that we overestimate technology on the short run, and then something happens, the reality check kicks in. All of a sudden you realize, wait a second, why would I use AI there? Or you realize with something like Excel and PowerPoint skills and Copilot, It's called Copilot for a reason. It's not an autopilot, it's a co-pilot. It's supposed to be something that you work in co-creation. And so for me, always the interesting bit about the adaptation cycle is actually when we feel something has happened, something all of a sudden is integrated in my daily life and it creates an added value. This is too funny, like this is the original TV ad from Excel, like from the 90s. And you see all stereotypes put into television advertisement of the 90s. But already back then, the promise was that with the help of technology, you are faster, efficient, you have a technology co-creator. But of course, if I think about AI now, and this ad has been reshot now just a few weeks ago, it's about this additional layer that helps me with the things that I want to do. It helps me like proactively completing tasks. It is always available and it represents a big added value. And also what helps us to get out of this kind of like, like this disappointment phase is when companies realize, yeah, there is actually a return on investment that is more than just saving hours and writing faster emails. Again, the example of Linde, I mean, they're really saving money there where, for instance, for human auditing, you can reduce the time a lot. And it's not about replacing the auditors. It's, Linde never threw out people because of AI. It's about freeing up their time so that they can do different tasks more efficiently. If I think about the case from Airbnb, and I can bore you with dozens and dozens of these examples where with the help of AI, we reduced time and we really have this kind of like beneficial factor of saving time. In the interest of 2026, because all of you have huge experience in rolling out AI, I assume if you ask me for this year, what's so important is that we treat it iteratively. Maybe you already have a list of prioritized use cases for your company, but this is only for the moment. So I would highly encourage you always, maybe every 3 months, think about what are the most prioritized use cases for you personally, for you as a company. But second of all, it's just an assumption. So how can you try that assumption out? How can you test it with a pilot? But then even more importantly, how can you make the organization aware of these developments? So this is actually a media company in Germany, and in order to get a coffee, you need to click away AI. So every single time you get a coffee, you want to get a coffee, you are aware that there is an AI driver's license, that there is an AI working session each Friday, that there is an intranet section, so you can't ignore that. But it's also about how to use the tool. So again, this is another media company, like it needs to be available for every single one, and we can all do it in-house if we like to do, but more importantly, this is what I came up with, like to differentiate between different interests in this skilling, because we all have a different interest in this upskilling. Because if you're a leader, you have a different perspective on things than if you're a functional leader. And then, of course, you can think about how do I make sure that for every item I have something in education. For further rollout, maybe I empower AI champions, which up to my experience has been profoundly successful. So I took that picture. It's a family-run company. It's 1,000 people, and with the help of leadership, we identified 70 AI champions. They have dedicated training, and they are now on the forefront of the rollout, and they are the first line when someone has a question, and that's hugely successful. But also, people need to understand what they're allowed to do, and with all AI out there, like, data functions really well without AI, but AI doesn't function without data. So I love this as a metaphor because I've seen it over and over again that marketing comes with an amazing idea, like I want that chatbot for this and that, and then IT is like, well, it's a great use case, but where would you get the data from? Could we actually talk how we can create an API, etc.? This old saying, shit data in, shit data out, this has not gone away with the magic wand of AI. So data is important, and to cut the long story short, if I can give you one recommendation about this here, this is not set in stone. It's iterative. It's a constant adaptation, and it's not set in stone. And also, after the rollout, this is just the beginning, because if I've made one experience, every corporate immune system is really good in fighting what it doesn't know, and Gen AI isn't unknown. So Gen AI is never purely a technological play. It's culture, it's a change. And unless people understand that it is of added value, like a personal productivity superpower, they will fight it. So in the interest of time, if I look into the magic wand 2026, or in the magic ball, in the crystal ball, I don't want to bore you with the benchmarks and everything. For me, it's always like, it's competing on a very high level. And if I would do the screenshot in 5 weeks from now, it would already have changed. More interestingly, and we're in France, we're in Paris, we forget that we have actually with Mistral a really, really good software. And it's actually open source. And I have many clients who love it. And in these benchmarks, we kind of like forget it's not about being number 1 or being number 3 or being number 8. It's about how we would love to use it. What are the use cases? The tokens, like how much they cost, can I run them locally? And all of a sudden, Mistral is performing extremely well. And so we need to look at these stats differently. Gen AI, of course, will become the operating system for our life. I mean, in the US, we have it for health. Just a week ago, finance was introduced, so we can combine AI with our personal bank account, and we have access to that. As you are perfectly aware, search engine optimization will not go away, but generative engine optimization is, for all the clients we have currently, super important, because they see each month more of this search referral traffic is shifted, and it's a steady growth, to generative engine optimization. So how do I take place there? When people have this AI layer, when they are looking at a product, the big question is like, are we ready for a future where not only humans come to our website, where an agent comes to our website? We will have, it's this old saying, money follows eyeballs. So if we have a lot of eyeballs on AI, of course, there will be advertising. We have the, let's say, the vibe coding moment. I mean, especially this year, if you look at vibe coding, it's crazy what's possible. And I love this as a metaphor. It's available to all of us, and each one of us can do with vibe coding amazing things. And on the surface, it looks amazing, but it's most likely, until now, not really reliable to scale out. So that's, it works somehow. But if you look then at the source code, I mean, it's not the end of software engineering. The talk of the town, of course, agentic, and I've seen the overall agenda, and I just want to share that from my personal perspective. On the left, this is where I see with our clients where we are most of the times, individual use, like departments are using AI. This is amazing, I love that. Roll it out, amazing. The next evolution is when we start to have it company-wide and with all these interdependencies. What I'm so excited about is the third layer, when all of a sudden ecosystems talk to each other, when one company is connected with a set of agents to the other company. Think about procurement and these things. At the end, it's 3 things. It's more easy to build them. Second of all, we can basically have our internal data with it in a secure way. And third of all, we can orchestrate it like go to the open internet. But again, just as I said with the shopping, our service, whatever we are offering, has to be machine readable. It needs to be agent friendly, because I honestly believe that will be the future. It's not only humans coming to see us, it's also them. In the interest of time, look up world models, I would say this is a super fascinating development, because for me that's the next evolution of AI, when AI is not only built on probability and stochastic and math, but when AI is built on a real understanding of physics and worlds and how these things come together. Of course, we will see a lot of innovation around hardware, like around what we can do with our mobile phones, what we can do with audio, what we can do with, at home. We've talked about the physical AI, but I'm also fascinated about development coming from that, and none of us wants to interact with 3.5 kilograms on our head. But also moving along from virtual reality, which quite honestly, I'm not a super big fan of, because for me it's always like too hindering us what we can do. And this is so amazing if I think about this next layer of intelligence with the classes. I mean, the right class has a screen built in, and it's a pretty good screen. And again, this is the worst version of technology of today, so I can imagine in 10 years from now there will be gorgeous things imaginable. If companies like OpenAI are bringing out hardware, I don't expect it to be a smartphone. I rather expect it to be something that we could wear. And then all of a sudden we're at the movie Her, which I can recommend to watch again. AI that can see, that can talk to us, that can display something with us. So to wrap it all up, I basically, hopefully, was able to introduce you to this kind of like exponential phase that we're all into. And I would never dare to say that I know what will happen in the future, because there is always this exponential surprise factor that. So if we don't know the future, a way better way to tackle this is to ask the right question. One good question to ask ourselves is, what is it that actually influences us as an individual, as a company, as an ecosystem, etc.? But this is not only trend scouting, this is also what do we do with this trend? Is it something we invest? Are we buying a startup? Are we testing it with a prototype? Or is it something we wait, which is perfectly okay? Think of the metaverse. For many, many companies, it was a great decision to say, you know what, I'll pause, I see where the metaverse is going in 3 years. Second, very importantly, what is it actually that makes us relevant in that exponential future? I love that movie from Toyota, because as an automotive OEM, they've been the first one to raise that question. What is mobility? It's not only coming from A to B with a car, it's access to education, it's access to see friends and family. So if we are in mobility, maybe we should think about how people want to live together in the future. And all of a sudden, Toyota is building a city close to Mount Fuji. And third, as humans, how do we stay relevant? I mean, how am I future ready as someone who is 50 plus? And constantly needs to learn. And that is something like, it has something to do with acknowledging change will always be there. It's acknowledging that our skill set must change. This is quite interesting. This was the World Economic Forum thinking about 2025, but that was before ChatGPT and everything. And now they redone that for 2030. And we have to ask ourselves, are these the right skills that we should acquire to be able in a time of perfect AI? It's not only about hiring new people, it's about reskilling. And there are amazing examples how organization can upskill their people. But the upskilling needs to be done in a way that people are not afraid. And it also needs to be done in something like where we teach more of like meta competencies. Because something that I learned today might not be relevant in a year from now. So this kind of like learnability, teach people like, lifelong learning and be in the growth mindset. And this is something, and I do say that as someone who is 50 plus, I constantly have to ask myself, am I right now really in my growth thinking, or am I like, I don't like it? As an organization, I can encourage you to read the book, Psychological Safety. It's an amazing book outlining how important it is to basically create an environment that feels, emotionally secure for people to innovate. What's also clear is we don't have to do things alone. We can co-create with others. So this is an example from a family-run business, and they invite other industries to co-create solutions with them. We can be connected with the startup ecosystem, and in Paris you have the perfect example for that. Every client I know dreams about having Station F in Germany. It's an amazing ecosystem, and to think about as an organization, this is the example from General Electric, to offer something to the startup community, to invite them, and then to co-create solutions, amazing. We can connect ourselves with potential customers. We can have open innovation, the idea with Lego ideas. We can invite open innovation. We can ask people to submit their ideas. It's clear it needs to go through the innovation funnel. We need a lot of ideas, and we need to cluster the ideas. But then, out of 100 ideas, there might be 2 ideas worthwhile proceeding, and then they will make all the difference. We also should think about ecosystems, because that is something that I really felt with all of our clients. It's the right thing to do, to think about where am I in the future connected. This is, by the way, Walt Disney drawing in the 50s how he sees Disney connected with all the offerings he has. Because if you have movie, you have merchandise rights. And if you have amusement parks, you can sell your merchandise. And that, changed over the years. This is the ecosystem today. It's proven highly successful. And as a company, we should think about what actually is it that would create this kind of ecosystem. Let me just skip 100 slides, because I see otherwise, how am I doing? I started with these pictures, and I want to come to the concluding thoughts about it, because me personally, I draw so many inspiration out of these pictures. We're most likely right about what will be technical possible in the future, but we will be wrong about the timing. And it's also a very exciting moment to reconsider, and I gave you 3 questions how we can ask better questions, and this is my final question for you. If we don't know the future of something, the future of mobility, the future of health, the future of politics, the future of a city, maybe the better question to ask is, what is it that we actually want to have? What feels desirable as a future? What is a future that we would like to wake up to? And I do mean it in all due to respect. It should be way more inclusive and not so stereotypical as it was depicted in the past. So this kind of question that we ask ourselves, what is it actually that feels utopian and not dystopian? I tried it with the help of AI to visualize it. And it's so funny, because if you don't prompt it, properly, this is how AI imagines the future in Paris in the year 2100. And if you then challenge AI, why did you draw it like this, and what is meant with that? It's so funny to see how AI simply makes it up in the kind of stuff that, we don't want, because honestly, I don't want to wake up to a future like that. I don't know about you, but this is not the kind of future that I want. So the final thought, and the perfect with the music, because this is my nice fade out. If we think about the role of technology, when Apple introduced the Apple Vision Pro, I hated every single use case. A father watching kids play, that's not a nice use case for technology. And so when we think about the role for technology, we should think about, does it really add value to something? Does it feel desirable? Is it something that I want in my future? Or is it something that is just trying to mimic and replace something that in real life would be way better? So on that note, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing so much ideas, images, and even love with us. That was fast and furious, no, but definitely fast. And we will all receive, I think, a chance to watch the replay. Je ne suis pas sûre de quand, but definitely. So if you want to pause and to have another look at this presentation, you will be able to. Maintenant, je crois qu'il y a un autre temps qui est prévu dans l'après-midi, qui est celui des masterclass. Donc vous allez être invités à choisir les salles dans lesquelles vous vous rendrez en fonction de vos intérêts, puisqu'il y a une salle dans laquelle vous parlerez plus prospectivement de l'avenir de l'email builder. Une deuxième salle dans laquelle il sera plus précisément, le sujet sera plutôt celui de la façon dont on va connecter les données, les contenus, les canaux, et voilà, notamment de GEO, ce sera en anglais pour celle-ci. Et puis une troisième salle qui sera celle de Relevancy, dont a déjà parlé Ludovic tout à l'heure, pour ceux qui étaient là pendant le débat. Maybe before we left, because we were in a rush, but maybe someone has a final question for Maks. So if you do want, I think we have 2-3 minutes left, because then you will be at 3 in your masterclass. Somebody? Quelqu'un a une question en particulier? Il faut du temps pour digérer tout ça. Okay, maybe just one. So I take the chance. What do you think separates the organizations that currently creates lasting competitive advantage with Gen AI from those that simply automate existing processes?
I already was undressing myself, so
yeah,
apologies.
Surprises, it's always like, you know,
and if we have 5 minutes, I have 100 slides to even show. I can reconnect the computer. No, but if I understood the question correctly, the competitive advantage besides the productivity gains and efficiency, right? And yeah, I think maybe it's a bit of a complicated answer, but for me it's more about having this cultural rollout, because you know, humans are scared, and I completely understand that it's a new technology, and the first reaction is like, I don't want that. But once they are using it and once they are seeing this efficiency gains, and I come back to your question, but once they see it, they use it differently, and that's the exciting bit. So when they start to use it differently, like as a sparrings partner for creation, for ideation, if they actively use it daily, I mean, then you see a huge uptake. And I've seen that with companies over and over again. It's real. It's additional ideas. It's the efficiency gains. It's additional time which is left for humans. So I like that when people can say, oh, finally I have time to do more sales and I can pick up the phone, or I have time to meet with a colleague in a meeting, and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe just a very, very quick one. You shared plenty of ideas of the next steps in order to, you know, like embrace this innovative mind and to, but what would be the first like baby step, the first step every one of us should, you know, go for?
Curiosity, you know, and I do mean it with this lifelong learning, because yeah, I'm 54. And for me, it's also new. You know, keep in mind, ChatGPT has been introduced not even 4 years ago. So sometimes we treat it as something that has been around since 20 years. This is new to everyone. And these development, like corporate API versions, are around not even 3 years. The exponential progress that something can be done in a really good way is maybe a year. So it's pretty new. And I would say the first thing is always curiosity. Try it out, hands-on, because only if we try it out, we can have a thinking. It's this growth mindset. And so for me, I actually love change, and you know, to test it on a weekend and to see what I can do. And the third thing is like to concentrate on what I'm good at as a human. And you see it perfectly with me. You know, I hate meeting transcripts or meeting follow-ups. Like, let AI do that. I mean,
DXD.
machine is better than I'm there. But I'm good in creativity. I'm good in a brainstorming. I'm good in a meeting with someone, thinking about a marketing strategy. And this is something I'm better than the machine. and to
Definitely.
acknowledge, and the last sentence, to acknowledge, I'll start my day with that. I think, looking at my calendar, these are tasks that I can outsource. Machine is better than me. I like it that I have someone taking it away from me. And these are tasks I'm really good at. Strategy, thinking, emotion, gut feeling, intuition, taste.
Thanks again.
No, merci.
Merci.